Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third round recap of Down to the Wire. Again, alongside my NHL analyst, Nolan Thode. Nolan, how are you doing today?
I'm feeling good. I got my second dose vaccine today, so things are looking bright, and looking forward to this summer and the Cup final. It looks like we got a good matchup on our hands, so lots of good things. And finishing up grade 12, it just kind of seems surreal that all of a sudden we're where we are in our lives.
Yeah, I have to agree there. And it's just the shitty way of ending grade 12, right? There's no other way of saying it in a pandemic and online world. And it sucks that we got robbed of everything here. No sports, no prom, no grad. Everything was done virtual. And yeah, given those circumstances, it's such a shitty way to end off a year where we saw the Canadiens, the first Canadian team to reach the Stanley Cup final since 2011.
Yeah. No, exactly. And, if the fans had been there, obviously, they have limited capacity, but, a full packed Bell Center in the Stanley Cup final, I'm sure is like a sight that everyone, wants to see. And, we're not going to be able to get that. And instead we got these, mega expensive, you can only buy two tickets at a time. You can't even buy single tickets. But I think, the Habs fans will still bring the energy, even though, there's limited capacity. And, Tampa, we don't even have to talk about them. They're essentially, at more than full capacity. It seems like, they won the cup last year, but they didn't get a share with their fans. So, this year their run feels a little bit different.
And actually, breaking news here, like we've done multiple times on this show, the Habs are just expanding their capacity to 10,500, up from the 3,500 that was for Game 6. So, the Bell Center is going to be buzzing for Game 3, and Game 4.
No, I have to agree with you there. Even though it's only 10,000, 10,000 Montreal fans is equal to about 50,000 Tampa fans. They're going to be in there. It's going to be loud. I can't wait for Game 3.
Well, let's get right to the recap before we get to our Stanley Cup final prediction, starting with the New York Islanders and the Tampa Bay Lightning. We saw Tampa win this series in 7 games, 4-3, and like this story has been all playoff long. The Tampa Bay power play is very dangerous. They have lethal shooters, whether it's Stamkos, Kucherov, Point in the bumper spot, or maybe even it's Killorn. You have Hedman at the point. You sometimes have Hedman, switch with Sergachev if the power play isn't going as well as it could be. But, with that series, with the exception of the 8-0 game, it seemed as though every game was one shot. We had the odd empty netter here and there, but it seemed like this series was a lot closer than what we saw happened in Game 7, because Game 7 was dominated, in my opinion, from start to finish by Tampa Bay. And, Varlamov was making every big save, possible.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with you there. Aside from the 8-0 game, all these games were super close, and one bounce, it could have gone either way. And I think a big point to that is the play of Andrei Vasilevsky and Semyon Varlamov. They were both really good in this series, and looking at the guy in the other net for the Canadiens, Carey Price. I'm expecting to see a lot of close games in the Stanley Cup Finals as well.
Keeping with the recap of the Lightning and Islanders series, and this series marked the last time that the Islanders will play at the Coliseum as they move to UBS Arena on a different part in Long Island. And, the last game at the Collie was Beauvillier's overtime goal. And if we go to the game before that, which was Game 4, we saw Ryan Pulock make a incredible game saver. And that's going to be a trivia question down the line. But it's crazy that that Beauvillier scored, and what a run the Coliseum had. They saw, I think, 3 of their 4 Stanley Cups raised in that building. And, the Islanders, they are on the up and up. They are a great team. And I think that with the Islanders and Lightning, right, this is the second year in a row that we've seen them play. I think we're going to see more matchups like this in the conference finals. This isn't going to be the last time that the Islanders and Lightning will play. And one weird stat that really was funny for me while I was researching was that the Islanders have yet to let up a shorthanded goal all season long, but the time they do it is in Game 7, and that was the game winner. So, the way the power play broke down in the defensive zone when they were trying to, Cirelli, it was 3-on-1 on Cirelli, and then he somehow got, still had possession of the puck and found Gord in the slot for a one-timer past Varlamov. It really sucks for Islander fans that this is the way their season's ending.
Yeah, obviously unfortunate, not the victory that they wanted. Obviously they wanted to win the series and head on to the Stanley Cup Finals. But like you mentioned, what these Islanders fans got in their last two games in that building was an amazing comeback in Game 6 where they were down 2-0. Came back, won quickly in overtime, and then that Pulock save at the end of Game 4. So a really great run, and it's unfortunate because they obviously lost to Tampa last year, so it's definitely bitter losing to them again. But just another great run from the Islanders, and I think in terms of expectations in the preseason, I think they're always going to keep exceeding them, and people are even despite this going to keep doubting them in the future. And like you mentioned, I think we could be seeing Tampa and New York Islanders. These are just two very well coached, very well built teams, and they know how to get it done in the playoffs. They have in the last 2 years, and we could be seeing this matchup many times down the road.
Brayden Point was the star of the series, and Montreal is going to have to find a way to slow him down because he had, I think, 9 goals in a row, and he was just an unstoppable force for the Islanders. He always found a way to put the puck in the back of the net.
Yeah, exactly. He was one game off of, setting or tying the record for consecutive playoff games with a goal. Just 9 straight games with a playoff goal, or 9 straight playoff games with a goal is just, absolutely insane. And he's been a big part of that offense. They obviously have a ton of weapons, but, he's kind of the new fresh face. And, he had a great run last year and another great run this year. Back to your point, though, on the shorthanded goal. 2 games, this postseason have been won, 1-0, where the only goal was a shorthanded goal, the other team being Montreal against Winnipeg. It's just, a very strange way to win a game, but we've seen it done twice in these playoffs.
And both of those goaltenders will match up in the Stanley Cup Finals. So just another, odd twist to that storyline.
Yeah, exactly. And it's strange too, because you're looking at this Stanley Cup final as, an Eastern, 2 Eastern Conference teams. And it really begs the question, and 2 Atlantic teams at that, really, I think, the best division in the league. You can look at it after this season. I think, the Atlantic division is getting the respect that it does deserve.
Moving on to the Montreal Canadiens versus the Vegas Golden Knights recap here. We saw Montreal win in 6 games, 4-2. And, everyone keeps writing off the Habs. After game 1, people were thinking Vegas in 4 or Vegas in 5. Now, granted, it wasn't Montreal's best game, or Price's, I think that was Price's worst game of all playoffs that he's played. You could probably argue the 4-0 shutout on home ice in game 4 against the Leafs. But, I just didn't really like how Price was playing that game. But during the whole series, we saw Montreal's penalty kill. That was a huge recipe for success. They went perfect, I believe, during the whole series. And Vegas, you could argue that Vegas's power play didn't, it sucked. They didn't convert on anything. They didn't have any confidence. They weren't moving the puck quickly. The passes were telegraphed easily for the Montreal Canadiens defenders to intercept or intervene. But now it's 2 years in a row that we've seen Vegas in the playoffs. Last year against Dallas, this year against Montreal, where their top players simply haven't been their top players.
Exactly. Mark Stone went, stone cold in the series. I don't think he registered a single point. That's pretty crazy. And, a big part of that is the power play being shut down. I think, Montreal did a phenomenal job on the penalty kill. And one of Tampa's strengths this entire postseason, like you mentioned, has been the power play. So special teams is going to play a big role in the Stanley Cup Finals. And, Montreal was able to get the edge in the semifinal.
I thought that when it was 2-2 after Nick Waugh scored the game 4 overtime winner, that Vegas had momentum going home. Obviously coming off the OT win, going back to 18,000 sold out crowd. And, I thought Montreal, I was kind of nervous that game. In game 5, I was like, okay, it seems as though that the tide is turning towards Vegas and that they're going to take it in 6, take it in 7. But, we saw Josh Anderson, Burlington native here. He jump-started the offense. He's been, a good player to start off the opening faceoff. He gets in hard on the forecheck. He hits everything. He's an immovable force, it seems like. We saw him drive towards the net, and then just Barry Kotkaniemi, KK, he puts in the rebound, and now it's 1-0. And Montreal, their offense kept rolling in Game 5. They kept rolling in Game 6. So it's great to see that we have another Canadian team in the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, you talk about the momentum coming back from that Game 4. You thought it shifted to Vegas. Or I think the real, momentum shift in this series was the mistake by Marc-Andre Fleury in Game 3. Vegas was playing a really solid game. Both goaltenders were playing well. And, who's to say that the Habs don't score if that doesn't happen? But, if Fleury doesn't do that and they win that Game 3, they have a 2-1 series lead. Fleury still has his confidence. A lot of things came from that. Instead of, rolling with their goaltender, they kind of, for the rest of the series, were deciding between Leonard and Fleury. That created a little bit of, just panic in the Vegas locker room. Obviously they have 2 elite goalies, so they have that option. But, in the playoffs, it's so big when you can just be confident playing in front of the same goalie each and every night, knowing that he's going to give you a great chance to win. But, that gaff by Fleury, people are going to be looking at it as the real turning point in the series, and the Habs were able to capitalize off of it. Josh Anderson scoring that goal and the OT winner. You mentioned he's just a great player in terms of, setting the tone. My coaches playing youth hockey, whenever we would, roll out the starting lineup, if I was on it, they'd be telling me how I need to set the tone, just kind of let the other team know how things are going to be the whole game. And I think Josh Anderson is just one of those players, and hopefully he's able to have his way against the Tampa Bay Lightning.
We talk about setting the tone there, and I think that's a great point you bring up. The officiating, I think that goes hand in hand with a player setting the tone as well. Montreal in Game 3 or Game 4, whatever it was, both games we saw horrid officiating. I mean, we saw Corey Perry get high stick. That can't be missed. I mean, you have to, as a ref, you have to act like your job is on the line every night, because who's to say that Gary Bettman doesn't call you up and say, all right, you did a subpar job. I came out in a press conference like 2 years ago and said that we have a standard of excellence here in the NHL about our referee. And, I said that the refs are the best in the world. So when you go on record as Gary Bettman and you say that, and then you watch Chris Lee go out and lay an egg, essentially, I was furious at the officiating, the refereeing. It could have not have been more poor than at all. And, we saw in Game 5, that was in Vegas, right? So we saw in Game 5, the officiating was much better. And I know that the bar was set really low, so that really doesn't say much. But, I think there was a cross-check early on that Byron had on Theodore, and that's a legit penalty. So I, as a fan, I'm like, okay, I agree with that. We learned in our early days in minor hockey, you can't, cross-check someone in the back in the numbers, because that's a penalty. And so it was called. And, I liked that the penalty was called, because that set the tone for the game.
No, I absolutely agree. And, you go back to the high stick, and, there's some calls, where they get missed, and you can kind of understand how they got missed. But that one was just, a blatant penalty. Corey Perry was bleeding and, showed the battle scars afterwards. But, Montreal was able to get the last laugh in the series. So despite that poor officiating, I think, the fans are, just kind of, it's in the past, and hoping for, a much better showing of the refs in this Stanley Cup final.
And, one final point before we move on to our prediction for the Stanley Cup final. I really do feel for Pete DeBoer, because, with his stars, the Mark Stone, the Jonathan Marchessaults of the team, not performing up to their, what we saw in the regular season, he was they put him in a bad spot, right? Because you're damned if you do with, going with Leonard in Game 6, or you're damned if you don't, right? So it's almost like you're in a lose-lose situation. Because if you win Game 6, you're still going to have questions in the net, no matter what. So it's just, I really do feel for the coaching on that perspective.
No, for sure. You look at Vegas, and, pretty much since the first expansion year, there's been Fleury trade rumors, just because, he still has a little bit of value. And, this offseason, we really could see him being moved, because, Vegas is in cap hell. They're already paying another goalie $5 million a season. So he's aging, and, he might have showed his age a little bit down the stretch in that playoff run. And we might see Marc-Andre Fleury, be on the trade block.
moving on to our Stanley Cup final prediction here. The winners, like we've said, it's the Montreal Canadiens versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. And they certainly do have playoff history. Most recently in the second round back in 2015 when Tyler Johnson scored with literally 0.1 second or 0.2 seconds, whatever it was in game two. These teams have met in the first round in 2014 and 2004 in the conference semifinals. And Tampa holds the 2-1 series edge. But, this Montreal team, it's different. It's been a different team since game 4 of the first round. It seems like they've bought into the system that Ducharme has placed. And, something that I forgot to mention, Montreal is accomplishing this without their head coach. He's in COVID protocol right now. So, hats off to them. I certainly don't know how they've been able to do it with Luke Richardson behind the bench, but if teams that don't have a head coach, like the Coyotes, like the Sabres, they could call Luke Richardson and give him an interview from what they've seen in the playoffs so far.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like he's just getting a few games in the regular season. He's, winning these crucial games for them. You talk about COVID protocol, you got to bring up Joel Armia. Montreal's penalty kill has been solid all year, and he's been a part of that. So his absence, we're going to see how it's felt. He's not playing in game 1. I don't think he's traveling to Tampa when he does get back in the series. He's just one of those underrated players on Montreal. Maybe on paper, he doesn't scream superstar or anything to you, but he's one of those players like Josh Anderson, that really brings the energy, sets the tone. And, you're never going to have to worry about Joel Armia, not going 100% on every shift.
Well, I just want to correct you there. So actually news came out today that Joel Armia has cleared COVID protocols. So that's great news. But logistically speaking, the Habs have already had their practice. Jake Evans took his spot on the fourth line. So I feel as though that adds speed to the fourth line, in which, if they, with John Cooper, if they want to throw the Cirelli or the Johnson line out against the Stahl, Perry and Evans line, I think Evans can add a little speed element. That way it's not as bad of a scenario as it could be if Armia is out there.
No, I agree. And, putting Evans in there, he's going to be a very hungry player, hasn't played, I believe, since that game 1 versus Winnipeg. And, when you look at this Tampa Bay roster, speed on a lot of their lines, you got guys like Point, Kucherov, even guys like Coleman and Yanni Gore. These are fast guys, Anthony Cirelli. So they're going to have to match that in some way. And whether it be, putting Jake Evans back into the lineup, I think, it's something you just got to look at.
And I guess I should add that Joel Armia is taking his own private jet down. He just flew down today. So, he hasn't practiced yet. So I think it would be unfair to him to have, he would only have warm up to practice in tonight. Right. So I think they're going to go with Evans since they've already practiced. And I think that's fair for me to say.
Mm-hmm. And putting Evans in there, might be a strategic thing. If the players look down the bench and see Jake Evans, he's kind of, one of those guys that they were playing for in the last couple of rounds. So to be actually playing alongside them, it might give this Canadiens lineup a little boost.
Another thought I have with Evans coming into the lineup is, what does that mean for Tatar? It seems like that means that he's on his way out because, he was a great regular season, but he didn't perform up to those expectations that fans, management, that he put on himself. And, it seems like Tatar could be traded in the offseason since Jake Evans is taking his spot over him.
Yeah, and it's not the first time that we've seen Tatar be scratched. When he was traded to Vegas in 2018, he wasn't, he was scratched in the Stanley Cup Finals against Washington. It's interesting because, you think of Thomas Tatar and you think of a guy who can provide a lot of offense, but, we've seen him scratched, now twice in crucial playoff games. And it really begs the question, what is his role on this Canadiens team? And, what's he going to fish out there on the free agent market if teams know that, he's not going to be able to get it done in the playoffs?
He was also scratched in the regular season. So it seems as though that he has lost his spot within the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, with Montreal, they have a couple of young guys, obviously coming in and taking spots in the lineup. I remember a point you put on your sports story, I believe, a couple of weeks ago. It's just kind of crazy, especially now how far we've seen these Canadiens come, how, it took them so long to get Kotkaniemi and Caulfield into the lineup because it seems like they're a much better team with them, in the lineup.
Yeah, and going back to that, like Ducharme looks like an idiot. He looks brainless. When you think of the run the Habs have been on, Caulfield had 4 goals.
Yeah.
4 goals as a rookie in the semifinals against Vegas. I mean, you scratched him for games 1 and 2. It's
Mhm.
crazy.
Yeah, exactly. I think, the reason that he was scratched is because they were taking a bit of a different approach to the Toronto Maple Leafs, more like a kind of shutdown kind of thing. But as these offensive players have started to, hit their strides, I think, this Habs team is, very going to be a very hard team to beat, especially in 7 games.
Well, getting back onto the main topic here, I think Montreal is going to have to establish a cycle game off the rush. In Game 7, I saw that Tampa really defended well against the New York offense. And, New York had a lot of one and done, dumping in, and then, Hedman or Sergachev, whoever was on the ice, broke it out in clean succession. So they didn't really sustain any ozone time. And when you don't have that, it's going to be hard to score off the rush since, against a team like Tampa Bay, who does defend really well.
Exactly. They defend really well. And you mentioned guys like Hedman, Sergachev, also guys like McDonough. These are just really good puck moving defensemen so that, the dump and chase isn't as effective on them because they can just, grab that puck behind the net and make a quick pass. And all of a sudden Tampa's, breaking in. They dominated that play in Game 7, up until late in the third. The Islanders had that one final push. But, this Tampa Bay team, when everything is going right for them, it's really hard to establish, anything against them.
I'm wondering if Carey Price versus Andre Vasilevsky is the best goalie matchup we're going to see this playoffs. I think it is, considering they are 2 Vezina goalies, and I think Montreal, they really like the close games. Let's go back to the semifinals. 4 of the 6 games were decided by 1 goal. So, and Tampa, we could go with them in their series against New York. We mentioned that a lot of their games were decided by 1 goal. So it seems as though goal scoring might not be as apparent as some people think.
Yeah, it's going to be a really close series. I think, both of these teams, especially in the first couple games, are sort of going to be feeling each other out just because, that's, kind of what we saw in the Tampa Islanders series, more so in the Vegas Montreal series, just because they hadn't played in a while, whereas Tampa and New York had played each other in the playoffs earlier, a year ago. But yeah, I feel like these first couple of games, we're going to see a little bit more of a passive approach. But, as the series goes on, hopefully, it's a tie series after a couple games. Price versus Vasilevsky, it's an incredible goalie matchup. Both Vezina winning goaltenders, but, both in my eyes, Vasilevsky obviously hasn't won the Hart, but he's been, he was probably the MVP of this Tampa team in the regular season this year. And he has been, essentially the MVP, very underratedly for the past couple seasons. 4 straight series, when they've won, he's had a shutout in the series clinching game. And I think when you have a team like Tampa that has a lot of star power on offense and defense, the goalie can get overshadowed. But I think Andre Vasilevsky, it really might be the battle of the 2 best goalies in the NHL right now.
It's all about the timely saves, and Andre Vasilevsky really knows how to make them. I mean, same as, the same is said for Carey Price. So it's, this is going to be such a tight, we talk about, the defense when Montreal has really good defense as well. But I think the problem for Montreal is they aren't getting enough contribution from the back end. We saw in Vegas, that was really their main point of scoring. In Winnipeg, they had, their defenders contribute. But I think, with Tampa Bay, they can have, they're a lot more offensive defensemen. And with Montreal, they're more, I think like two-way defensive. So it's going to be hard for Montreal's defenders to contribute. And I think they need to step up, and this is the stage to do so.
No, exactly. You look at Shea Weber, he's playing in his first ever Stanley Cup Finals. He wasn't a part of that Predators team in 2017 because he was on the Habs by that time. But, he's going to be hungry. You look at him, you look at Carey Price, Corey Perry, Eric Stahl, even though Stahl and Perry already have cups, you have these veterans that, this is probably going to be, realistically their last run at it. So they're going to need to step up because, they might not get another chance.
And, I think with Phil Deneau and his pizza, he's certainly hoping to eat more. But, Phil Deneau is such a key contributor to the Montreal success. He's shut down the, Kyle Connor, Nick Ehlers, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner. We talk about Mark Thode, Alex Tuch, right? He shut them all down. So the next step is this tough Tampa depth, this Tampa team that's full of depth, and he's going to be relied on heavily, whether it's to cover the Stamkos line or the Kucherov line.
Yeah, exactly. 5-on-5, he's been incredible. And, even on the penalty kill as well, he's just played that shutdown centerman role. He's a pending UFA as well. I think, he's going to be able to fish quite a bit just because he's that perfect, defensive center. He gets the low key, Selke kind of attention, never really, up there, but, he's been playing like a Selke, winner, not just a nominee in these playoffs. And, obviously this is the biggest task that he's had so far, but, you go down that list, Matthews, Marner, Ehlers, Mark Stone, Pacioretty, like those are incredible players. And he's been able to have his way with them, on the faceoff dot. He's been incredible all playoff, and just, being able to shadow them when they're on the ice and, limiting their chances. He's probably, one of the main reasons that they are here in the Stanley Cup final.
Well, I certainly don't have much else to add, unless if you have anything else to add, we'll wrap it up here.
No, I think we're just looking forward to the Stanley Cup final. The fans are going to be there, like you said, 10,000 for Montreal. I think, it's going to be electric when it is there. And, Tampa Bay, they can bring the noise when they want to. They were pretty good in that game 7, especially near the end, when the Islanders were starting to get the chances, the Tampa fans were all on the edge of their seats. I think we're going to see a lot of 1-goal games in this series. And I'm definitely looking forward to watching some hockey.
Well, before we hop off here, did you see the crowd after Game 6, though? Like, the fans in Montreal, whoever was in the building, they had to stay an extended period because of the crowd outside. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, I saw this one thing on TikTok. This guy was just, happy running through the streets of Montreal, and he randomly ran into his buddy. Everyone was just out there. I have a friend who lives in Montreal, and, just to be a part of that city right now is incredible. And, if they do win the cup, obviously knock on wood, but we're going to get quite the celebration even in these COVID times.
Well, I'd like to thank again Nolan Thode for joining me on a third round recap of Down to the Wire.
It's always a pleasure, Pags.